Heyo, Plaid Man here. How's it going? I am so happy. Okay, I know what I'm wearing is kind of an atrocity, but technically I'm just chilling and relaxing because I sold a really big thing and finally got it like off my hands. So I'm really excited about that because it was a long cycle and it wasn't super arduous, but there was a lot of like back and forth and worry. And it's like 99.9% done. So, and I got paid. So I'm very happy about that. There's something about completing a cycle of action that feels amazing. And I'm sure all of you, to some extent, have experienced this because you do things on a daily basis. This is why there's a very decorated Navy SEAL commander, I want to say, a Navy guy, who has this terrific speech on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, I think I'll find it and put the link on it in my video. And basically he talks about in that how if you're having trouble finishing things and maybe you have your own stuff or whatever, he has a terrific speech, but he prefaces it with the first thing you should do in the beginning of the day is make your bed. At least that's what I recall of it. I saw it a while ago. But what was terrific about that and why he said that was so important is because at least you started the day with, you did something. You did one thing. If nothing else goes right the rest of the day, you did one thing. Like the bed is made. And then when you come home, it's really nice because the bed's made. Okay, that is not what I wanted to make a video about. I just want to say, and I apologize. I'm wearing a Hufflepuff shirt. I got a Star Wars Empire jacket. I got my Hufflepuff pants on. And, you know, whatever. And I know the lighting's weird. I was like, hey, cool, let me just get the tripod and put it here. And I'm realizing, like, well, the lighting isn't so great, so maybe we won't do this again. But trying different locations, different things, different ways. I really love having it on a tripod, but I don't love my tripod, so I got to figure out something else. Different tripod. Amazon's a thing. Anywho, neither here nor there. I didn't really have a specific thing that I wanted to talk about until I had a wonderful back and forth with somebody who's been watching the videos. Jerry, I'm talking to you. He is my awesome cousin who is flamboyant and over the top in the best way possible. In that he's just high energy all the time, and every time he communicates and every time I meet him, it's just, you know, very in a good way. Like I'm not really doing a good job of explaining it. He's just very much like, and it's awesome. It is really invigorating. I will say that perhaps some people might be like turned off by it, but that's kind of true about anyone. Like on the reverse side, if you have someone who's like super quiet and reserved, what have you, other people are turned off by that. So anyways, but I was talking to him, and I guess I had made a mention of it in one of my other videos, and this is why I love conversating and reading the comments and any other suggestions people have. You can put them in the comments. Like, please, I do read them. I do acknowledge them. I appreciate them. And if I haven't gotten to them yet, I'm trying to get better about responding to them, but I'm also not trying to like have a text war. So if like somebody says something and other people have already commented, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should go more in detail or do a part 2 of a particular video to elaborate on a perspective or a viewpoint or what have you. Anyways, he had brought something up which I think is very interesting. And the simplicity of it is, what I recall of what he said was that basically robots are the future slaves of humanity, if you will. And if you think about it, there's some odd reality to that. Like, we drive cars, and cars are like a really immature, like a 101 version of a robot. So I guess the first thing would be like, well, what do you define as a robot? And to that extent, I guess you would say something that has a certain level of programming that will do that without outside like interference, okay? So one could make an argument that a car is technically not a robot because for a car to really operate, a person has to be operating. A self-driving car, okay, but it's still not perfect. But here's what's interesting is even getting outside of robots in general, whether slavery or not, what I find is very fascinating is we as human beings keep running into kind of the same fundamental problems, which is energy, okay? And I'm going to do a little bit of a history lesson, but I challenge you to think about this. If you think about it, every major conflict, historically speaking, has been about energy. And when we talk about energy, here's why I think it's about energy. If you go back to hunter-gatherer, right? Well, energy, technically speaking, was food, sustenance for the body, okay? And this is going to be an ongoing theme, but it's sustenance for the body to survive. So what were, in the hunter-gatherer, what was the conflict? If there was conflict, it was about the surrounding area and the sustenance that provides, whether it's from berries or from trees and firewood or from hunting or stuff like that, okay? And frankly, when you're in hunter-gatherer, you can't have too many people, so the tribes or whatever you want to call the clans, whatever, move it around, they're only so big, okay? So it's not, you're not getting huge epic level conflict, 100,000 people duking it out. They just don't have the resources. They don't have, they're not making enough resources to have a population big enough to have that scale. So it's like little 5 guys here, 10 people here, 50, you know. But then you upgrade to the hunter-gatherer, or sorry, out of hunter-gatherer into the agrarian, which is like farming. And if you look at medieval times, is a very interesting, I mean, that's kind of a generic thing, but if you look at like medieval Europe and that era, and even before that, Rome and so on and so forth, you had Greece, ancient Greece, stuff like that. Pretty much whenever, anywhere you go, agrarian, it was the same concept. It wasn't so much the land, although the land was valuable, okay? But the land was valuable because why? And the reason why was that, but I did not say that right. Because of how many people, how many peasants, serfs, or what have you, were on the land. So again, we've gone from energy is food to energy is people who produce food, okay? So yeah, there's the size of your land, but more importantly, it's how many people are in the land. So you could have a huge spread of land, but if you only got 10,000 people on it, well, okay. But if you have that same thing and you have 100,000 people on it, now that's a lot better. So that's kind of what conflicts tended to be about is, oh, we take this castle. If we have this castle, now we can now we basically can have dominate this entire sphere, this influence, okay? And then we went from that to like the industrial age, okay? And that was, okay, it's not about land at all because you can have a factory almost anywhere, right? And in a way, it is about people, right? But it's actually flipped. It's not necessarily about people and what they produce, because then we invented and came up with the conveyor system, or I'm blanking on what it's called, the factory system, where it's like you put on this piece and this person puts on, Paul puts on another piece, and yada yada yada. So it wasn't necessarily the amount of people you had at the factory. Instead, it became how many people are buying it. So now it's energy in the form of consumption, okay? And you'll find, if you look back not too far, that consumption has been pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And what's fascinating about consumption is because, well, if you're producing something, well now, okay, you don't want to make something that'll last forever because, well, hold on. Now, how do we sell them a new widget? So you have this new wonderful invention called built-in obsolescence, which means you're building it, and instead of before, craftsmen, artisans would build something with the idea of it lasting as long as possible, okay? That was only so long it could last. Eventually, it'll die, but the idea was build something with high quality and do it right, okay? And then we flipped, and now it's like, no, we don't want it to be high quality. We actually want to see how much we can get away with. Even things like BMWs, Mercedes-Benz, Audis, Maseratis, you know, McLarens, Ferraris, what have you. There's an inherent built-in obsolescence. A, they make a new one every year, sometimes more. And B, just in general, like, things deteriorate, but they don't build them necessarily with, like, longevity in mind. It's built that, yeah, no, this is going to deteriorate, and hey, buy a new one. So your McLaren lasted 2 years? Great. Whereas before, it's like there are diesels that were made that those suckers will last like 20, 30 years plus. So wait a sec. Oh, if there's cars that can last 20, 30 years without like serious issues, and then you're building this other vehicle, a McLaren, that's like 4, 5, 10 times as expensive, but it only lasts like 2 years. What? And that's built-in obsolescence. So then we got into this thing where it's like, okay, so energy was people buying things, right? And now what we're running into is like, okay, so expand markets. But frankly, that's the wrong way to go about it, okay? That's just the wrong way. Like we were doing great, and then we got into the industrial age, and then we got into the consumer age, if you will. And now we're in the information age where we are the energy source again, because I post this on YouTube, you watch it. There's algorithms, there's robotics. You know what? This whole thing was supposed to be about robotics, and I got distracted. Sorry. Anyways, we're going to continue talking about this. So then it's like, okay, your information, the things you Google, the things you search for, the things you became the source of energy, the valuable thing, right? That's where we're at now. The problem is, okay, that isn't sustainable. Like, and frankly, that doesn't help humankind. So I'm not trying to say don't Google search things. I would suggest you use DuckDuckGo instead, or don't look at things on YouTube. I'm on YouTube right now. I'm going to be putting stuff on other platforms. So I'm not trying to say don't go on YouTube. I get it. We all enjoy it. It's not horrible. But we also need to realize that we are valuable, okay? And we're effectively giving all this information up for free. They are making money off of your information. And perhaps we should evaluate that. But deeper than that, I think there's a very fascinating issue, which is we as human beings need to start looking at where do we want human society to go? Okay? Where do we want to go? That's better, right? Take the hat off. Where do we want to go? Do we want to do space exploration and go on other planets and stuff like that? Or do we want to just stick it out here? And either way, they have similar things. Like we need to be more conservative with our energy and with things that we're using, and smarter about how we consume products. Like the fact that you go to the grocery store and you get 4 plastic bags is like, that's just ludicrous. And also the fact that we just take our trash, like today, we just take our trash and we put it in an area where nobody's living, and we just dump it in the ground and then put dirt over it. And we're like, that's cool. And it's like, yeah, except for like half of the things that you just dumped are plastic, and they're going to take, I don't know, 1,000 years to decompose. So what the F? No, that's not good. So, and I'm not, the thing is like, I'm not hating stuff. I just feel like we as human beings need to start realizing that what we're doing is not the ideal scene. So I challenge you all, and I think we can all start in a small level, to find something in your life, just one thing in your life, and then imagine what the ideal scene would be for that. Now, it could be for your job. It could be for your significant other. It could be your career. It could be your family. It can be your house, your car, whatever. Like, imagine, if you will, what is the ideal scene in that one thing. And what's fascinating, I think you'll find, is, okay, if I can do that and I can come up with the ideal scene, and the ideal scene's up here and I'm here, then I could start looking at, well, what would I need to do to accomplish this? Now, in all fairness, an ideal scene may not be something you'll ever accomplish in your life, okay? But I like to say, even though the saying is probably wrong, but if you want to get to the moon, right? You want to get to the moon, then I think it's wise to shoot for the stars, which are further past the moon, right? Because if you shoot for the stars, if you're going all the way to the stars, if you land on the moon, you did pretty good. You did pretty good. And I know that's kind of a weird thing, and that's not quite how life works. However, if you have something that's an ideal scene, if you start going towards that, you'll be a better person. And I think that that's true. We as humankind, we're so distracted with everything Netflix and all this other stuff that we haven't stopped to look at like, but what do I want to do out of life? What do I want out of life? How do I want my life to be? How do I want my significant other's life to be? How do I want my children? How do I want my work? How do I want my community? How do I want your state, your country? How do I want us to interact with other people? We don't do any of that. We don't even do the basics. Like, you talk to an average person, they're just living life day to day. I spoke to a guy today, and he moved to North Carolina for like 9 months, but the reason why he moved back is he was like, yeah, before we were making like 24 an hour or something like that, doing whatever they're doing. But then over there, we're only making 15, and we didn't like that, so then we moved back. And I'm like, okay, but you also realize you were spending less money over there, right? And he's like, yeah. So it's like, you're making less, but you're spending less. So you're good. And I guess he knew that, and we joked, and I wasn't making him wrong. But it's like this fascinating thing where it's just like, is the goal to make more money? Like, it doesn't matter? Like, make more money and then spend as little as possible? Like, that shouldn't be the goal. That isn't really the actual human goal. We have allowed it to be a thing because it's easy to categorize and like how much money, how many widgets, how many TVs, how many yada yada yadas. But that isn't really the goal. And I'm not even trying to quantify like happiness and be like, your goal should just be to be happy. It's like, no, you should have things like physical things that you want to do, but you should also have like accomplishments that you want to accomplish and then start working towards it. And I feel like if we as human beings start waking up and realizing like, oh yeah, there's more to life than just like widgets and things, then maybe we can start demanding and asking for and inventing and buying things that help us move towards that goal. Like with tools, if anybody who's purchased a tool in their life and has more than 2 brain cells will tell you, hey, when you buy tools, it actually makes sense to buy the more expensive tool because most of the time, it's a higher quality tool. It'll last you longer. So it's actually cheaper in the long run to buy the more expensive thing, okay? But then you have other companies like Harbor Freight, which makes good enough products, but we all know them to be like crappy makers of things. And I'm not trying to knock Harbor Freight, but like they're the Walmart of tools, okay? So yes, it'll work. And if you're buying it and you only need it for one thing, great. But otherwise, if you need something and you need it good, you don't go to Harbor Freight. You go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you get the good quality thing. So we should start asking ourselves, what do I want as my ideal scene? Where do I want my end goal? How do I want things to be? Because if you start doing that and if you start challenging other people, and I mean it with love and affection, and just when you're meeting up with the significant other and just ask them, what do you want out of your life, right? And have that wonderful, fun conversation, and then challenge yourself. What you got this one? What do you want for this one? And what do you want for this one? And you'll realize that as good as your life might be, that there are more things that you could challenge and push yourself. And I would argue that everyone from the bum on the street to Jeff Bezos does not do this and does not do it enough. Because if they did, then Bezos would not be a bajillionaire. You know why? Because he'd be like, well, wait a sec. I don't like this. I don't like how the world is. I want to make the world better. How do I do that with the money that I have? Oh, wait, I have oodles of money. I can do this and I can do this and do it effectively. And this is not me knocking Jeff Bezos, and it's not me knocking bums, and it's not me knocking anyone in between. But I feel like it's something that isn't talked about and should be talked about. So please, talk about it. Talk to your friends. Talk about, hey, what do you want out of life? What do you want your life to accomplish? But start small. Start with one thing. Okay, this became super long, and I wanted to talk about robots, but I'm not talking about robots anymore. So, I'm sorry. I will do a robot. I will do a video on robots, Jerry. Thank you all. I just pivoted into this other thing, and I really enjoyed it. So we'll do a separate robot conversation at another point. Thank you all for tuning in. Make another video tomorrow. Talk to you later. Flatman out.